Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Inside with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, as you know, we give you sports information from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is @ Indus News Sports. That basically works both for Twitter and for Instagram. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. And yes, from the world of cricket, yes, PSL Season 6 will be underway. 233 players and officials are set to go to Abu Dhabi for PSL Season 6. And yes, from the world of NBA, Brooklyn Nets win against the Celtics 130-108, while Mavericks defeat Clippers 127-121 on Thursday. And yes, from the world of Olympics, Japan sees no impact on Tokyo Games from US travel advice, and they're set to start on the 23rd of July 2021. And yes, world number one, Djokovic swept past Mats Morang to book his place in the quarterfinals of the Belgrade Open. And yes, those were the headlines, and we'll definitely be talking about PSL. Yes, it's the same PSL that actually was discontinued back in March due to the COVID-19 situation, but finally PSL is happening and the teams are ready to go to Abu Dhabi. Talking more about that, 23 players of PSL and the staff will be leaving for Abu Dhabi, and 168 players will travel in from Lahore on a chartered flight, where 65 players will travel to Abu Dhabi from Karachi. But anyways, to discuss more in-depth situation of how things will be, we have with us former first-class cricketer Mohammad Awais. Mohammad Awais, welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. How are you, Alamdar? How are you?
I am absolutely fine. Thank you for joining in.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's talk about and focus on Awais. Obviously, the teams are going. There's strict protocols. Obviously, the departure is conditional to the second COVID test report that's going to happen. And after 8 days of quarantine, they can start off their duties as cricketers. Obviously, after following the strict quarantine perspective. Anyways, you tell me how things will be now, because obviously things were very much different in Pakistan in terms of the situation back in the COVID times when COVID was on the peak, and obviously the whole PSL perspective was stopped for some time. But now that we are beginning it again in Abu Dhabi, in those scorching heat and the temperatures, how do you think this will go by?
Alamdar, the main thing, because, if you just, as a cricketer or life as a sportsman, and due to COVID-19, I would say it's really tough now, because you have to go through bubble,
right,
which obviously plays with the mind. I would say even plays with your daily physical exercises too.
Right.
It's really hard again, because you have to stay in the bubble for at least 2 to 3 days, locked in a room. Because you have to go through 1 or 2 negative tests, then you
right,
can join the team, and still then again you have to be in the bubble even when you're in the tournament. So it's a really tough position for any sports around the world, but obviously it's the life needs to carry on. It's everything is getting inshallah into normalized. The the cricket board or the sports faculty are trying the level best to actually have themselves in a proper position what the sports world used to be, or the normal world used to be.
right,
Obviously, the Pakistan, unfortunately, I would say the COVID-19 did struck Pakistan Super League, and it was a heartbreaking moment for everyone.
Right.
But if you just remember, it's just not Pakistan Super League. Most of even one of the biggest leagues around the world, IPL even got struck due to COVID-19.
right,
And this is one of the, I would say, one of the viruses where obviously you follow all the SOPs, you try your level best to be safe, but it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again, I would say, which keeps you safe, because you really need to follow all the precaution methods. But still, if it has to affect you, it would obviously affect you. It's June coming up, and
right,
it's really a proper humid conditions in the UAE. Because
right,
I've played all my life over there, I've represented UAE, I've played all my life over there.
right,
But one thing is good, that you're playing in Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi, actually, it's one of the open grounds, and the air flows over there in the evening. So
right,
it little bit cools up in the evening, I would say.
right,
But still, it's going to be a tough situation, humid conditions over there. Obviously, the Abu Dhabi, the UAE conditions, they suit spinners because it's a dry wicket due to the
right,
harsh conditions, the summer conditions over there. It's going to be a tough Pakistan Super League, but everyone's excited, even me too, because you want the Pakistan Super League to start.
right,
And because it's one of the main tournaments, because you're actually preparing for the World Cup coming up for Pakistan. Unfortunately, Asia T20 was I would say again postponed it to 2023. That was a heartbreaking moment for everyone.
Right.
But still, you have got the World Cup coming up, and the Pakistan really need to prepare because you have got big series after this. You have got the West Indies series, you have got the England series coming up. So there are series to series, and there are tough series again, I would say.
Right.
So this is the best time for Pakistan
But
to get the
Avas,
right
in
combination.
generally, I absolutely understand. Obviously, need to be mentally, physically ready. As I'm going through the details of the situation, they're trying to prefer coconut water all the time. They're trying to have ice collars and vests, and they're trying to keep a lighter kit. Not only that, it is also mentioned in terms of the forecast that the weather will actually rise up to 40 degrees Celsius. And you know it and I know it in terms of the situation of the humidity, which is somewhere around 50% to 65%. It surely is going to be very, very crucial for the team to play at that very moment. And eventually the game planned is somewhere after 5 p.m. But even then, in terms not only of the temperature, the humid levels, I'm sure the team will be sweating, and they will surely be, they would definitely be wanting all the hydration that they can, because ultimately we do want the PSL to happen. We do want things to be fine, but we also want to take care of all the players taking part in it.
See, Alamdar bhai, I mean, the temperature obviously rises up, I mean, even in Pakistan, the temperature rises around 41, 42 degrees. So
Right.
it obviously eases up your little bit, I would say, temperature. But back when you're playing in the UAE conditions where the temperature is 40 degrees, but feels like 43, 45, 46.
Right.
Because I've played all my life, I know how harsh, even you have been to UAE, so you know how harsh the summer conditions are there.
But yes, ultimately, Mohammad Akram Peshawar Zalmi's head coach has also said this will be difficult but not impossible. Surely everybody's more worried about the heat stroke. Let's hope situation of that does not occur. Not only that, there would be a lot of cramps, because when you're losing those electrolytes, you surely need those electrolytes to continue playing. So even then, as you mentioned, as you've also played there, Awais, do you think the team will be capable, like obviously as it's mentioned here, that it is definitely difficult but not impossible? So how do you see the team coping up? And we have hopefully as the tentative timeline that we have is from the June 5th to the June 20th. I think one of the most hot days and the hottest of the month that we've chosen for PSL.
But I mean, see, Alandar, I know that it's tough. You obviously get cramps whenever you're playing in different kind of conditions. Even if you're playing in one of the winter conditions, I would say back in UK when you're playing over there, when it's freezing up, and obviously that even gets you cramps when you're playing a long innings, I would say.
Right.
But still, you're professional. You obviously go through many exercises. Even your body's maintained to inhale the cramps what you get. But again, it's I mean, you're professionals. You obviously know one thing in your mind, and it's as a cricketer, I would say I would forget about heat. I would forget about the conditions in the UAE, but I would focus much more on getting my team into a winning streak over here. Because the Pakistan Super League has been a great tournament, again, like what I mentioned in the start, because you need to prepare for the World Cup coming up.
Right.
You don't have any, I would say, a series which would test your new players. You have all the tough series. You need to have your proper, after PSL, you need to have your proper Pakistan players, the proper lineup for the World Cup.
Right.
It would be a phase for the participation, because you can't try your new faces in the coming up series because you have got tough series.
Right.
You need to do whatever you can in the Pakistan Super League. But again, it's that your players, obviously, they'll have to give the 100% over here. But one thing, Alamdar bhai, you rightly pointed up about especially about the physique of the players. See, it's up to the management, I would say, of the teams. I know every team tries the level best to deliver 100%. The player tries to give him 100%. But see, the players like Shaheen Shah Afridi, who are one of the faces
Key
of
bowlers, yes.
Pakistan attack, and key bowlers, I would say, your bowlers need to be handled carefully, because when you're playing in the UAE conditions, your bowlers really go through cramp situation a lot.
Right.
They go through, I would say, many stress. I don't want anyone to go through stress fracture, because it's one of the, I would say, end of cricket career for many of the people. But they go through that. So you really need to take off your fast bowler, especially because they're asset for the Pakistan team.
Absolutely. And we surely want these assets to be prepared for the World Cup that we definitely would want to look forward to. And not only that, because of the situation in India, that's also a question mark of where the World Cup is going to be of the T20 World Cup, because initially, as we all know, besides that IPL situation that actually happened and the COVID situation struck India. So it's very, very tricky now. But even if that happens, ultimately that will happen probably in a better month. So not only that, it took us a while because the team were planning on leaving yesterday, but I think there was technical delays and glitches in terms of the visa and the quarantining situation. And obviously, I think they got the visa because we spoke to one of the officials at PCB, and it was informed that all of them have gotten their visa. They're just booking those flights for them. So in terms of so there are two things right now that I would want to talk about. It's going to be the double quarantine situation and then the humidity situation. So it surely is going to be one multiple amount of challenge for PSL.
See, obviously, I told you, I mean, when you're in the bubble position, you have to go through many things. Even I can quote you an example. Remember, when the IPL started on, many of the players actually they had withdrawn from the IPL due to COVID.
Right.
Due to bubble, I would say, because they
Biosecure
have
bubble,
gone through
yeah.
so many multiple bubble positions. Because I've been a part of the bubble position, and Alamdar, it's easy to say that
Right.
bubble, but it's really hard to be in a bubble.
I agree.
Because you have to be in a room. You just have to spend around 3 to 4 days
Right.
in a room. You just can't speak to anyone through Zoom, I would say, or through WhatsApp, but still
Right.
you can't physically meet anyone.
Right.
And I remember, because when I was in a bubble, and second or third day, it seemed that as if a ghost is sitting beside me, because you just need to sit in the room. You can't talk physically to anyone. So it's a
Right.
tough period for everyone. You need to go through that too, but still, the cricket board, again, I need to appreciate them, the way they have been working on, especially Wasim Khan sir,
Right.
because they have tried the level best. I know when the Pakistan Super League unfortunately came to a sudden end due to COVID-19, and I could read on his face, if everyone knows that, when the
Right.
press conference was going on, he went through a lot of trauma, I would say,
I'm
because
sure.
it was a phase where I remember there was tears in his eyes, because it takes a lot of time to get the Pakistan Super League or any league around the world. It
I
takes
agree.
your hard work, it takes your time, it takes your emotional strength, I would say.
Well,
So it's a
Wes,
great
let's,
initiative.
to be honest, let's hope for the very best in terms of the execution of PSL. Obviously, we all love PSL and we want it to execute the way it is supposed to be. Thank you so much, Wes, for being a part of the show and discussing the in-depth analysis in terms of PSL. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, we pretty much discussed whatever we had to in terms of the PSL situation. Let's hope the boys are up there and they're absolutely fine and they don't have to go through the whole tough situation. And yes, a lot of coconut water and the electrolytes just to ensure that they do not feel low. Anyways, we'll take a quick break. Once we get back from the break, there's so much more coming up in terms of sports. See you guys after the break. And yes, welcome back from the break. And yes, before the break, we were discussing the world of cricket. Yes, we were talking about the PSL situation. Let's hope all goes well. But not to forget, all the happening is also happening in the world of NBA. Yes, the playoffs are still underway and some really, really interesting matches that have been happening lately. Some of the things that we truly wanted to see. And we'll surely start off discussing the Brooklyn Nets victory against Celtic. But we definitely would want an inside scoop with regards to what's truly happening in the world of NBA. And for that, we have with us Josh Reynolds, all the way from the US. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back.
Great. So, Josh, the first game, yes, we talk about Brooklyn Nets. We'll start off with their victory over Celtic, 130 to 108. How do you see that match finally?
We were finally able to see the big three play like we assumed they would.
Right.
In game one, it was only the big three's ninth game playing together, and they came out of the gate a little bit slow. Game one, again, it's exactly what you would expect with only their ninth game together, but game two was a totally different story. They looked unbelievable together right out of the gate, and it wasn't just the big three. It was the whole starting five, Blake Griffin, and somebody who I have said is going to benefit most from the James Harden trade is that of Joe Harris. He is one of the best spot-up shooters in the entire NBA, and with how much attention the big three of Harden, Durant, and Irving, how much attention they draw, he is getting wide open looks, and last night was the perfect example. Hit 7 3-pointers in the first quarter. He just absolutely dominated. I believe he had 6 3-pointers in the first half. But they looked like the beast that we assumed they would be. And that is a scary, scary sight for the rest of the NBA to see those guys finally on the court together and to see them clicking like they were yesterday.
But I truly think we've been talking about the duo and the trio, and finally we see them performing. But as you said, they also had a trump card, which was Joe Harris to begin with.
Yep, they absolutely did. He has been very consistent all season. He's a guy who obviously Brooklyn wanted to keep a couple years ago, and he's a free agent. That was one of their biggest priorities. It was, hey, let's bring him back. Right. I think they knew obviously what they were trying to orchestrate and how just much of an important piece he would play. Right. And that's exactly what he did. He is going to be, I think, one of the key points for them. But again, that's the scary part. If one of those big three guys is off, if they're having an off night, right, Kevin Durant or James Harden or Kyrie Irving can go out and score 50 points whenever they need to. But to have a spot-up shooter like Joe Harris, who showed up like he did last night, and knock down threes at a consistent rate and wide open threes because those guys are drawing a double team, right, I just don't see how anybody's going to be able to stop that.
True. And if we look into the quarter situation, obviously the Brooklyn Nets in the first quarter were 40. Celtics could only manage to score 26. And then obviously the lead started to grow. And then in the second quarter, they turned up 31 points while Celtics only managed to score 21. I think they, from the very start, put on the pressure that was supposed to. Because if I look back into the situation, I think you've seen it too in lately events of them facing Buck. Bucks have actually managed to break some part of Brooklyn Net back in the day. But, I'm surely looking at how Brooklyn Nets is now trying and showing what they truly are about.
They really are. And you nailed it. The Bucks they've really had the Nets number, and this series is very different with Boston. Obviously, Boston kind of being coming into this understaffed. They've got injury with Jaylen Brown. He's out with a wrist, had wrist surgery, and last night it didn't help that Jason Tatum got poked in the eye and had to leave the game and was unable to return. Right. But yeah, the poor Boston Celtics, they are just not trending in the right direction at all. I'm very curious to see what they do this offseason and if they blow up their roster or how they kind of restructure it to build around Brown or Tatum. But yeah, the second round matchup that it's appearing to be of Milwaukee and Brooklyn is what all of us want to see. Right. Like you mentioned, before the playoffs started, Milwaukee is really one of the only teams who was able to beat Brooklyn. So I think that's what everybody's looking forward to. That's what everybody's expecting to see in the second round. And certainly that's what it's looking like we're going to get.
And even if we look at their performance, even in the game one, obviously Bucks I think they're getting there. I think they're gelling themselves as a team to a point of, I think, no return. Because for some, I've spoken to a few people, as per them, they see obviously Bucks as maybe getting there maybe by 2023, 24. But I think they're already on fire.
I think so too. I think this is honestly their year to make the run. Right. In their series, they have looked unbelievable, especially in their game two, very similar to Brooklyn's game two. Right. They just blitzed them right out of the gate. Miami just looked absolutely exhausted. True. And Milwaukee is just they knock down every shot. Their scoring is spread out just like Brooklyn's was. The moves that the moves that Milwaukee have made this offseason, right, and during the season with the trade deadline, going and getting a PJ Tucker, trading and getting Drew Holiday. They signed Brenton Forbes from San Antonio. These are moves that are really looking like they're going to be big time. These are guys who can come in. PJ Tucker plays great defense. He guards Jimmy Butler. Right. And when he's not on the floor, Drew Holiday is guarding Jimmy Butler. And obviously it's making it extremely difficult for Butler. He is not producing like he normally does, especially in the playoffs. But yeah, Milwaukee, I've heard the exact same thing. Everybody keeps saying, 2023, 2024, right, Giannis Antetokounmpo is playing amazing, but he just needs some help. It looks like he's getting that help this season, and that second round matchup, Brooklyn and Milwaukee, could be unbelievable to watch.
Sure. Now let's talk about obviously the game two that I want to discuss with you. Obviously the Phoenix Sun losing against the LA Lakers. Let's talk about Anthony Davis and LeBron James, how they managed to play their magic against Phoenix Suns.
Of course, Anthony Davis showed up in a big way. Game one, he did not play well, and he was the first to admit it. Just said, hey, straight up, if I play like this, we're not going to win a game, let alone a series, and kind of put that on himself. And he stepped up in a big way. 34 points in game 2. What I was most impressed with, he got to the free throw line 21 times. What
Right.
that shows me, he just wanted to be aggressive. He was attacking the rim from the very get-go. Obviously, when your outside shot's not going down, you need to get to the free throw line. That's exactly what he did. It's nice just to see the ball go through the hoop. And then, of course, down the stretch, he ended up hitting some big shots from the outside. But, of course, LeBron doing what LeBron does best, what we've seen him do so many times.
Right.
Hit clutch shots, hit a clutch three-pointer, a clutch turnaround jumper, just the most difficult shots that you can imagine.
Right.
Just seem like routine to LeBron at this point.
Right. I think they're also in the right direction, and I think the overall perspective of how we're seeing the playoffs, I think it's surely going in the interesting direction. I'd want to talk about the next match, of course. What's your take on the Clippers losing against the Mavericks? But to be honest, I was probably expecting the Clippers to win, and that was probably my take. But I don't know what truly happened.
That's correct. I'm right there with you. I am absolutely shocked that Dallas is at this point up 2-0, with the games being in LA. To go in, and if you remember, this is the exact matchup that the Clippers wanted. The last few games of the season, they intentionally tanked and lost because they felt they were best suited to play Dallas in this first round matchup. You've got to think that they regret that decision a little bit. Luka Doncic is just unbelievable, but it's not just Luka, it's the entire team. Everybody's playing well. Tim Hardaway Jr. coming off the bench, averaging about 24 points a game through these first 2 games.
Right.
It's incredible. The whole team's playing really, really well together, and Luka just made some of the most impressive shots I've ever seen in the third quarter last night.
Right.
Kawhi Leonard's one of the best wing defenders we have in the entire planet, and Luka just made him look silly, hitting turnaround jumpers, hitting one-legged three-pointers from the top of the key.
Right.
It is truly unbelievable. So seeing that was very, very awesome, and to be honest, I'm really worried about the Clippers at this point.
Absolutely, and talking about that specific quarter, yes, the third quarter was a game changer. Because if you look at the stats, when the Clippers began 33-35 in the first quarter, and in the second quarter they were 40 and Maverick were 36, which means obviously somehow the Clippers were at the lead. But in the third quarter, I think either they got exhausted or they got tired. They only managed to score 19 points, whereas Mavericks took their lead in this specific third quarter by scoring the 30 points in the third quarter.
Yep. Kawhi Leonard was unbelievable in the first half. It looked like he was going to drop 60 points, and you nailed it. In the third quarter is when everything changed.
Right.
They just came out of the gate, came back from the half just completely exhausted, and Dallas didn't skip a beat. It really makes you think with some of the offseason moves that the Clippers made. If you remember, they fired Doc Rivers. They fired their head coach.
Right.
And possibly because, again, who knows, but it feels like they just kind of used him as the scapegoat. But it makes you think maybe that wasn't the correct move.
Right.
They gave Luke Kennard a $64 million deal. He hasn't played a single minute in the playoffs. That does not look good. Last game, he wasn't even dressed.
Right.
It just makes you kind of scratch your head and think, okay, you know what Paul George is going to do. You know what Kawhi Leonard's going to do. Where else is the help coming from? And their roster just simply isn't built for it right now.
Right. Anyways, Josh, there is so much more that I wanted to discuss, but I'm short of time right now. We'll surely have you again on our show to discuss more in-depth analysis in the world of NBA. Thank you very much for joining us.
Of course. We'll speak soon.
Great. So, yes, so that was probably the major impacts that actually happened. Yes, we finally managed to see Brooklyn Nets doing what they're best at, and the Sun obviously losing against the Lakers, and the Clippers obviously there was a disappointment losing against the Mavericks. But anyways, this was the major playoff games that we were talking about. A few more line up for the future, which is going to be the Wizards facing the 76ers, the Knicks facing Hawks, and the Jazz versus the Grizzlies. That's the upcoming matches for tomorrow. But anyways, I would surely want to jump more onto the next news of the day. Yes, we talk about Tokyo Olympics. Yes, Japan sees no impact on Tokyo Games from US travel advice. And not to forget that people are still having the same point of view with regards to Olympics, that they don't want this to continue for the fact that COVID-19 situation is really, really bad. Australia has actually advised that they will not allow their players to travel to Japan. So Australia will be not involving themselves in the Olympics. And the officials have actually pledged the games will go ahead as planned. And as per their plan, July 23rd 2021 is the date that they have selected. And just in case, I want you guys to know that, with regards to banning the overseas participants, spectators to be precise, the economic impact is $1.39 billion. So this is the major loss that the Olympics would actually face. But anyways, let's hope that they plan to execute this in the right way, in the right direction, and not making sure that someone gets COVID, because that would surely be a very tough situation in the hands of the Japan and the Olympic teams. But anyways, this was from the world of Olympics. I'll quickly jump over to a major update in terms of tennis. Yes, Djokovic, number one, made a winning start at the ATP 250 Belgrade Open, and he won against Mats Morang, actually, who basically sits at the 252nd place below Djokovic. So obviously, Djokovic surely has that edge of being the number one player to do that. But anyways, Morang managed to start the second set positively, but eventually lost against him, which is 6-2 and 7-6. But anyways, this is how it is. And the Serbian is basically preparing himself, he's trying to prepare himself for the French Open next week. But I think it would be surely a lot of learning for him, besides the fact that he lost against Djokovic. So this is how sports is. But anyways, this was pretty much it in terms of sports. If you want to reach out to us, you're on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Sports. Till then, take good care of yourself, and bye-bye.